They put it up overnight. A bold, aluminum, private property, an "O trespassing" sign, gleaming in the morning sun like a slap across the face. It stood square in the middle of my ranch's access gate, zip-tied to the fence post like they'd staked a flag on the moon. Below it, a smaller placard. Violators will be prosecuted. HOA Ordinance 14B. I cut the engine to my truck and just stared. This wasn't some forgotten back gate. It was the only road in or out of Reardon Ranch. One narrow stretch of gravel that had served my family for 3 generations, cutting across a hill that used to be wild mesquite before it got carved up and paved over. I stepped out of the cab and walked up to the sign, my boots crunching against the gravel like a countdown. Sage Ridge Estates sat just on the other side. What used to be ranch land was now 30 cookie-cutter homes, wrapped in white vinyl fencing and insecurity. Solar panels, stucco walls, and artificial turf. Everything about it looked allergic to dirt. My fingers brushed the edge of the sign. New. Not even sun-faded yet. I didn't need a name to know who was behind it. Karen Withers had introduced herself 6 months earlier, clipboard in hand and sunglasses sharp enough to cut glass. "You're Mr. Reardon, I assume?" "Cole," she'd said, pronouncing my name like it was the first time she'd ever heard it. She was president of the Sage Ridge Homeowners Association, a title she carried like a sheriff's badge, and she'd come with a list of shared concerns. Dust from my hay trucks. Flies. Olfactory disturbances from the cattle. She used that exact phrase. I'd listened, polite as I could manage, and explained this land had been a working ranch since the 1950s. That the road she was so concerned about wasn't their property. That it was a recorded easement, legal and long-standing. She smiled, the kind that didn't reach her eyes. "We'll have to revisit that. The neighborhood has different expectations now." Now here I stood, 6 months later, facing those expectations cast in metal. I pulled out my phone and took a few photos. Not out of panic, out of principle. My grandfather taught me early, always document what you didn't break, because someone will swear you did. The sign blocked the gate entirely. No way for a delivery truck to come through. No way for the vet to get to my pasture, or for me to haul feed in. I ran a hand through my beard, trying to hold back the heat rising in my chest. It was barely 7 a.m. I called the HOA's number from their website. Straight to voicemail. I called again. Nothing. By 8:30, I was standing in the Sage Ridge HOA office, a prefab trailer parked at the far end of their development, all fake shutters and forced charm. Inside, air conditioning hummed like a threat, and Karen Withers sat behind a whitewashed desk, perfectly still. "Mr. Reardon," she said, voice calm, fingers folded. "To what do we owe the pleasure?" "You blocked my gate," I said flatly. She blinked, as if I'd just spoken in Morse code. "The HOA board voted unanimously to restrict access through Sage Ridge," she said. "It's a private road now. For residents only." "It's not your road," I snapped. "That gravel lane was in use decades before your subdivision ever existed. It's an easement, recorded in the county ledger. I've got the paperwork." She smiled again, that same tight smile. "It was never formalized by the developer. Technically, the road you use runs across Sage Ridge common property. The board determined it was a liability. We have kids who play there. Cyclists. If something happened." "Something will happen," I interrupted, "when your next Amazon order gets delivered by horse because my truck can't get through." Karen stood slowly, her heels clicking against the cheap laminate. "This isn't personal, Mr. Reardon. We're simply enforcing our rights." She handed me a copy of the ordinance, HOA Regulation 14B, newly minted. "No unauthorized through access without express HOA approval." "You don't own that land," I growled. "You're squatting on a handshake deal." Karen raised a brow. "Then I suggest you get your lawyer involved. We're done here." By noon, I was in the county clerk's office, dusty deed in hand. The easement was real. My grandfather had granted informal use of the road to a local ranching partner 50 years ago, and the path had been used continuously ever since. It wasn't fancy, just gravel and stubborn will, but it was mine. But Sage Ridge's developer never bothered to formally record the easement for access when they built. Probably figured no one would care. Now, the HOA was claiming that silence as ownership. And the law, as it often does, was murky. Technically, the clerk said, squinting at the property maps, if there's no written easement agreement and no recorded maintenance contract, they might have a case. They don't own the dirt, I said, my voice low. The clerk shrugged. Common land isn't the same as public land. Back home, I watched as the UPS truck idled at the blocked gate, unsure what to do. My feed supplier called, said the semi wouldn't risk coming down if they couldn't turn around. That night, I had to walk a quarter-mile uphill with 2 bales of hay on my shoulders just to get feed to my steers. I was angry, but I wasn't reckless. I started a file. Dates. Pictures. Calls logged. I talked to neighbors in Sage Ridge. Most of them apologized nervously, said their hands were tied. A few were worse. One woman called the police because she saw me standing by the gate too long. The deputy apologized, but he couldn't do anything. HOA business, he muttered, eyes tired. You'll have to go through civil court. By the end of the week, I was boxed in. No one in, no one out. Just a rusted gate with a shiny new sign. I sat on my porch that Saturday evening, staring out across the hills. This ranch wasn't just dirt and cattle. It was where I buried my father, where I taught my niece to shoot cans off the fence post, where I watched rainstorms roll in across the open sky. I'd worked too hard to be erased by vinyl fences and a woman with too much free time. That night, I lit a fire in the barrel out back, tore the photocopy of HOA Ordinance 14B in two, then again, until the paper was confetti in my fist. I tossed it in the flames. Let them try to burn me out. If they wanted a legal fight, I'd give them one. But not the kind they expected. The morning after I burned their ordinance in my fire barrel, I woke up with a clarity I hadn't felt in years. This wasn't just about a gate or a sign anymore. It was about control. About people who'd moved in and decided that the world had a twist to fit their idea of neatness. They wanted the land without the dust, the silence without the solitude, the rural charm without the rancher. They didn't want me. Fine. I'd show them what not wanting me looked like. My first move wasn't dramatic. It was measured. I started by hiring Ellen Torres, a local land use attorney who'd once helped my neighbor win a boundary dispute. She was tough, mid-40s, sharp eyes behind thrift store glasses, and zero tolerance for bureaucracy. I read your emails, she said, flipping through the thick folder I brought her. HOA's either overstepping or bluffing. But either way, they're betting you won't push back. I plan to. Ellen smiled. Good. Because this could get ugly. HOA law's a minefield. Half nonsense, half precedent. She filed a formal cease and desist letter that same day, citing historical use of the road, and included photos of mailboxes, tire ruts, even Google Earth timestamps. But she warned me it wouldn't be quick. Or clean. They've got money, and more importantly, time. Karen Withers sounds like the type who treats bylaws like scripture. I nodded. She acts like she wrote the damn Bible. Meanwhile, life on the ranch was limping. I had to haul feed by ATV now. The tractor couldn't make the turn from the alternate trail through the gulch. Too narrow, too steep. The post office stopped delivering altogether. Said it was unsafe for carriers to reverse half a mile without a proper turnaround. The vet missed an emergency call when one of my heifers bloated from clover. She survived, but barely. All because of a sign. What stung worse than inconvenience was the message, "You don't belong here anymore." I drove out to Sage Ridge that weekend, parked just outside the HOA's precious paved loop, and knocked on a few doors. Some slammed shut the moment I said my name. Others peeked nervously from behind curtains. But a few, just a few, talked. Like Doug Marshall, retired firefighter, lived in a gray split level near the East Trailhead. "I told Karen not to mess with you," he said, scratching his stubbled jaw. "Told her that ranch was here before the HOA even existed. But she thinks she's queen of the cul-de-sac." "Why didn't you speak up?" He shrugged. "She's got half the board scared of getting fined for letting their grass grow a quarter inch too long." My wife already got written up for using a beige umbrella instead of approved taupe. I pick my battles. I nodded. I understood. Fear did strange things to decent people. But there were cracks in the dam. Ellen's letter was ignored. Instead, I got 3 neatly folded envelopes in my mailbox, hand-delivered by an HOA courier. 1, a formal trespass warning. 2, a fine notice for unauthorized vehicular access. And 3, a demand for road maintenance fees from the past 5 years. Total, $11,270.84. I laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was absurd. A shakedown in broad daylight. When I called Ellen, she was livid. They're trying to bait you into breaking the law. Don't rise to it. I won't, I said. But I will respond. That night, I started combing through county records like a man possessed. Old land plats, surveyor's notes, aerial photos. I even drove an hour to the Historical Society and dug out a 1972 topographic map. I knew there was something wrong with the road. Something off. And then I found it. Buried in a land use report from 1989 was a notation. Provisional access route across Reardon property, no formal easement recorded. My road. Their only road. They'd paved over it, landscaped around it, and assumed that silence was permission. But it had never been legally transferred. Just a gentleman's agreement between the developer and my late uncle, who never signed a damn thing. The subdivision sat on a one-road loop. One way in, one way out. And the first 100 feet? Mine. I stared at that document under my desk lamp for a long time. It felt like holding a loaded gun. I could hear my father's voice in the back of my head, gravel deep. Don't start fights, son. But if someone drags you into one, finish it so they never try again. By Monday, Ellen had confirmed it. The easement was verbal only, unrecorded, and therefore revocable at will. It's like a borrowed driveway, she said. You can take it back unless it's written and recorded. So I can close the road? You can. But they'll sue. Good. Meanwhile, Sage Ridge kept escalating. They hired a private security firm to monitor perimeter traffic. Translation: a rent-a-cop in a reflective vest sitting in a folding chair next to my gate, radioing every time I walked within 10 feet. They filed a complaint with the zoning board, claiming my equipment usage violated noise ordinances. They even tried to get my agricultural exemption revoked by calling my land inactive. But ranchers don't scare easy. And we sure as hell don't forget. The turning point came one quiet Tuesday morning. I was loading hay when a moving truck pulled into the gravel drive, 2 confused men climbing out. Delivery for 206 Juniper Bend, one said. GPS says this is the fastest way in? It was, I said. They gestured at the locked gate. Can you let us through? I paused, then shook my head. Afraid not. Roads closed. HOA orders. They drove off, visibly frustrated. An hour later, 3 cars came speeding down the hill, Karen Withers in the lead, flanked by her vice president and treasurer, all dressed like they were going to a boardroom, not a confrontation. Karen's car skidded to a halt beside my fence. She got out, hair perfect, voice sharp. You turned away a moving company, she barked. That road is a public necessity. I leaned against the post, arms folded. Thought you said it was private? She bristled. You're obstructing community access. No, I said. You obstructed mine. I'm just returning the favor. She pulled out a stack of papers. You're going to regret this, Mr. Reardon. I'll bury you in litigation. I took a step forward. You've already buried yourselves. That road you paved? That's my land. Your developer never got a recorded easement. And now it's revoked. Legally. Permanently. Karen stared at me, color draining from her face. You can't. I can, I said. And I did. Fence is going up next week. You'll need to find another way in. She left without another word. And I stood there alone, with nothing but the wind in the grass and the steady beat of my heart. I'd found the one pressure point in the whole tangled mess. Now all I had to do was press. The fence went up on a Thursday. Not a cheap one, either. I hired Mendez and Sons, a local outfit known for building livestock fences that could hold back cattle, coyotes, or angry developers. Welded steel posts, cross-braced corners, chain link and barb topping for good measure. No trespassing signs every 30 feet. I watched the crew work from the hood of my truck, arms folded, sipping coffee like it was a war memorial unveiling. They were sealing off the only road into Sage Ridge. 100 feet of gravel and clay, legally mine. Karen Withers had 30 days to appeal the land use revocation. But she didn't wait. That same afternoon, she filed a temporary injunction in county court, accusing me of reckless endangerment, malicious obstruction, and community hostage-taking. Ellen called me that night, calm but wired. They're throwing the book at you. Then we better build a bigger bookcase. The story hit the local news the next day. Rancher Block Subdivision Road in legal dispute. They ran a drone shot of the fence. Grainy footage of Karen in a pastel suit, declaring I was punishing innocent families and undermining neighborhood security. What they didn't air. My statement. I'd given the reporter a box of documents, property maps, the county assessor's notation, and photographs of the gate blocked by the HOA's own sign. But that didn't fit the narrative. The comments section exploded. Half the town called me a hero. The other half called me a lunatic. I didn't care either way. I wasn't in this for the cameras. With the road sealed, chaos descended on Sage Ridge. Emergency services refused to enter until access was re-established. Residents had to park at the bottom of the hill and hike groceries up the slope. Delivery drivers abandoned packages by the barricade. Some residents tried to bully their way in. One guy in a lifted Tacoma rammed the fence at midnight. The steel didn't budge. He bent his grill and got a trespassing charge for his trouble. Karen kept up appearances, walking the neighborhood with a clipboard like she could audit the crisis out of existence. But it wasn't working. The board fractured. Half her allies started whispering about removing her. The others went silent. Then something unexpected happened. Doug Marshall showed up at my gate. Same gray hoodie. Same cautious demeanor. I brought you something, he said, handing me a USB drive. What's this? Board meeting recordings. Internal memos. Karen's emails. I raised an eyebrow. Is this legal? He shrugged. She never said we couldn't record. Besides, I'm done. I moved here to retire, not live in a dictatorship. That night, I plugged the drive into my laptop and sifted through hours of HOA politics. Most of it was mundane paint swatches and fence complaints. But then came a gem. Karen, speaking at a closed meeting, recorded 5 weeks before the gate was blocked. If we cut off access, Reardon will cave. He can't run that place without us. No deliveries, no livestock support. He'll fold in a month. The board has to be united. She knew it would cripple my operation. She wanted to make an example of me. The whole thing had been a calculated pressure campaign. I emailed the audio file to Ellen. Her response came in less than 10 minutes. This is gold. Game on. The preliminary injunction hearing landed on a Monday. The courtroom was packed. Karen showed up with a polished legal team, 3 attorneys in tailored suits, armed with glossy binders and condescension. I sat with Ellen, jeans pressed, boots clean, heart steady. Karen's lawyer led with drama. Your Honor, my clients, 50 families, have been effectively imprisoned by Mr. Reardon's vindictive closure of their only ingress. This is a safety hazard, an attack on the common good. Ellen stood next, calm and lethal. Your Honor, what my client has done is assert legal ownership over land that was never transferred, never recorded as common property, and was used without formal agreement. The HOA attempted to starve him off his land. We have the footage. We have the audio. This was never about safety. It was about power. Then she played the recording. The courtroom went still. Karen's face twisted, her lawyer blinked twice, and one of the HOA board members in the back turned red. The judge leaned back in his chair, exhaled, and said, "This court finds the plaintiff's case unconvincing, if not downright manipulative." Motion denied. Mr. Reardon retains the right to control his property access as defined by county records. It was over in 30 minutes. Karen didn't even look at me as she left. But her world, so neatly curated, was unraveling. Within days, Sage Ridge fell into disarray. 2 board members resigned. The neighborhood forum shut down. A petition started circulating to dissolve the HOA entirely. I started getting handwritten letters from residents, some apologizing, others begging for compromise. I responded to none. Ellen filed a civil countersuit for damages to my business, citing loss of income from undelivered feed, veterinary complications, and reputational harm. We had receipts. We had motive. We had Karen on tape. Even if we didn't win, it would bleed the HOA dry in legal costs. By week's end, the once pristine cul-de-sac looked like a battlefield. Trash bins uncollected. Lawn crews confused. Vendors refusing service. No one wanted to deal with the gated mess on the hill. Doug showed up again. "You won," he said simply. "No," I corrected. "They lost." I stood at the fence that Friday night, sunset casting long shadows across the gravel. The wind was quiet. The world still. This place had belonged to my family for generations. That road, that gate, that patch of dirt, they were more than land. They were inheritance. Identity. Roots. Karen and her kind had come in thinking they could reshape the land to suit their fantasy. They thought asphalt could outlast earth. They forgot something simple. You don't fence out a rancher. You just teach him to build better fences. 3 weeks passed before I opened the gate again. By then, the headlines had quieted, the lawyers had retreated, and the last HOA meeting had dissolved into bitter silence. What once felt like a fortress of bureaucracy now looked more like a paper tiger, bloated, brittle, and hollow. I didn't announce the reopening. I simply unlocked the chain, swung the gate open, and left it that way. No fanfare, no speech, just a quiet return to something that should never have been stolen in the first place. The gravel crunched under delivery trucks the next morning. FedEx, Tractor Supply, a local vet in a mud-dusted Bronco. They waved, I waved back. No words needed. The road remembered them. Karen Withers, however, was gone. Word around town was she'd sold her house in haste, sign out front, blinds drawn, a for sale by owner, flyer stapled to the gatepost. Some said she moved to a different county. Others claimed she was still pursuing appeals, trying to clear her name. I didn't care. Her kingdom of mulch and bylaws had fallen. Not with an explosion, but with a slow, undeniable erosion. A pressure she couldn't see until it washed her out completely. Ellen and I sat on the porch the next evening, sharing a quiet beer under a darkening sky. The cattle were grazing near the lower field, fence lines strong, the wind calm. "You know," she said, "you could sue them back for every penny. Legal costs, business losses, emotional distress." "I know. Want to." I shook my head. "They've paid. More than they realize. What would I even spend it on? A nicer gate." She laughed. "You sure you're not secretly a monk? Just a rancher. One who got tired of being pushed." The Sage Ridge board was dissolved in a 28-9 vote. Without Karen's grip, the residents reassembled into something resembling a neighborhood again. The rules were relaxed. The fines rescinded. The landscaping committee disbanded entirely. Doug Marshall sent me a letter, handwritten, folded in thirds. "We were wrong to let it go that far. You didn't just protect your land. You protected something the rest of us forgot mattered. Thanks for holding the line." I pinned it to the barn wall next to my father's old branding iron. Summer rolled in. The fields turned gold. Calves were born and tagged. My mail resumed, delivered promptly, even cheerfully, by a carrier named Cindy who liked to leave peppermint candy in the box. The fence stayed up, not as a wall but as a line. A reminder. Respect isn't granted by committee votes or property lines. It's earned every day by the way you treat your neighbor. Sometimes that means waving over a fence post. Sometimes it means building one. But the quiet didn't last. One afternoon, a black SUV rolled slowly up to the ranch. No HOA decals. No angry honking. Just tinted windows and silence. I met it at the gate, shotgun slung loose at my side. Not aimed, just visible. That's how we do it here. A man stepped out. Mid-50s. Trim suit. Expensive shoes with dust on the soles. He introduced himself with a leather-bound folder and a smooth voice. Mr. Reardon, my name is Ellis Grant. I represent Furnace Holdings. We're looking to acquire rural properties in the area. We're offering above market, especially to folks like you, who own access points. I stared at him. Access points. He smiled. Yes. Parcels like yours offer critical ingress for potential development. We'd be happy to discuss figures, well into the 7 digits. I let the silence stretch. Then I said, "Tell Furnace Holdings this isn't for sale." He blinked. Not even to talk. Especially not to talk. His smile tightened. Mr. Reardon, things are changing around here. The city's expanding. You could be part of the future. I leaned forward, resting a hand on the gatepost. You see that line in the gravel? He looked. My great-grandfather laid that road with his own hands. Hauled stone by mule. Packed it with an iron drum. My father taught me to mend it. My brother died defending it in a flood. And a woman with a clipboard tried to steal it without lifting a finger. I paused. You think I'd trade that for some abstract future? He didn't respond. I nodded. That's what I thought. He got back in the SUV. The engine growled, then faded down the hill. A storm was coming, but not yet. For now, the land was quiet. That night, I walked the length of the fence. The moon was low, the stars sharp. Every step brought a different memory. Spring branding, winter snow, my father's voice warning me that boundaries weren't just about property. They were about principle. When I reached the far corner, I stopped, rested my hand on the post, and looked back at the winding road now gently lit by porch lights from Sage Ridge. Not enemies anymore. Not friends either. Just neighbors. And that was enough. The next morning, I added one more sign to the fence. Not a warning. Not a threat. Just a wooden plaque, carved by hand and hung beside the gate. Respect the land. Or be reminded who it belongs to. The wind fluttered through the tall grass, like applause in the language of the earth. I turned, walked back toward the house, and didn't look back.